Okay, so today we're going to be talking about breakfasts. The reason for this is because we've got quite a few patients who are coming through who are quite keen on healthy eating or trying to lose weight. And some of the questions that I've been asked are, what's the most healthy breakfast? Or indeed, do I need to even eat breakfast? And that's what we're going to discuss today. So I've gone into my cupboard and I found what I would say is the most sort of common types of foods that you might be having for breakfast. We've got some porridge, we've got some Weetabix, I've got some cornflakes, some granola and some toast and also an egg. Now, when it comes to food intake, I like to break down the most important elements of this, which is the carbohydrates, the fats, proteins and fibre. In terms of healthy eating, there's also the nutrients that go in with that as well, but I'm just going to concentrate a little bit on the carbohydrates and the fats today because that's very important for maintaining weight but also trying to lose weight as well. And so I think I wanted to try and remind people about volumes of food because a lot of my patients actually are already healthy eating and yet they're not losing weight. The reason is they are just eating too much. So I've put together the volumes that are recommended by the manufacturer. So for example, 2 Weetabix. I wanted to point out a few things. One is that is the amount of porridge that is recommended, which is tiny amounts. And also the granola, which I would also argue is a tiny amount as well. And a lot of my patients will put twice as much in. And I want to remind you that whatever we discussed today, this is the amount that they recommend. And if you then double it, obviously it's going to be twice as bad for you. So first things first, if we talk about fat, there's a common theme coming up here because we've got the granola, which actually out of all of these, apart from the egg, is pretty high in fats. Actually, the toast is the highest, whereas Weetabix, cornflakes, not so bad. Porridge is somewhere a little bit higher than that. If we talk about carbs on their own, then actually the order is not quite the same. We've got porridge down one end, we've got the Weetabix and the cornflakes, we've then got the dreaded granola again, and 2 slices of toast will push you right over the end. It's worth just mentioning about eggs because eggs are very, very low in carbs. In fact, actually, then off the side of the page here when it comes to carbs. But if we talk about fat, they are right down the other end. So they are off the scale this end. It depends whether you're going with a high fat diet or a high carb diet. This will hopefully become a little bit clearer in a second because I wanted to talk to you specifically about carbs to start with. Now, carbohydrates are really good sources of energy, and that's what gives us our energy throughout the first half of the day. That's the reason for eating breakfast in the first place. What you really want is some form of energy that is going to sustain you up until lunchtime. So carbohydrates can be broken into 2 different types. You've got the complex carbohydrates, which are slow absorbing, and they do tend to last a long period of time. And then you've got the refined sugars part of the carbohydrate. Now that's very quick energy, lots of it. But if you don't use it quickly, then the body will, within an hour or 2, decide to store it. And really at the end of the day, we don't really want it to be stored, we want it to be used. So I guess if we're talking about sustainability, especially if you are somebody who has a desk job, doesn't actually do a huge amount of exercise in the first half of the day, then actually you're really looking for more complex carbs rather than the fast sugars. And this is where it's worth just bearing in mind. If we talk about the sugars, this order doesn't really change dramatically. So again, granola, my least favourite, quite high in sugar. Cornflakes got about half the amount of sugar that the granola does. The Weetabix has got about half the sugar of the cornflakes, and the porridge has got about half the sugar of that. So you can see on paper, porridge, number 1, brilliant, this is excellent. And actually it is excellent until it comes to how you process or you prepare it. Because if you put it with some cold milk, like you would do with these, then you're not breaking down the product in the cold milk. You can even soak it overnight and that will slowly break it down. But when you eat it, you'll get a little bit of a peak of the sugars, you'll get the carbohydrate, which will then sustain you through the whole day, and this is wonderful. However, most people don't eat porridge that way. Most people will blast it in the microwave, and that just totally breaks things down very quickly, and it makes those long-acting carbohydrates easily accessible, effectively turning them into the same effect that you get from refined sugars. So instead of it being down this end, if you boil the living daylights out of it and eat it, you actually send it all the way down the other end. And what happens then is you get a big peak, first couple of hours, you're feeling wonderful, and then come 10, 11 o'clock in the morning, you have a crash. And that's when you start picking. And we're trying to get rid of the picking, the excess calories that we don't need. So if you prepare this properly, soak it in something like milk, or you can use yogurt, not low fat or no fat yogurt, because no fat yogurt basically means more carb yogurt. We're trying to get away from that. So normal fat yogurt, if you soak in that overnight, actually that gives you a really sustained level of energy throughout the day. So if you prepare that properly, great. These, absolutely fine, absolutely fine. Granola, already said it, it's just full of sugar, it's got loads of fat, it really isn't very good for you. And if you eat any amount of it, that's a tiny amount. If you eat what I would describe as a more normal portion, it's even worse. The bread's just worth bearing in mind. We're talking about bread on its own, and it's already down this end of the carbohydrate scale, and it's also got quite a bit of fat in it as well. If you then put butter on it, that pushes the fat level even higher. If you put some jam on it, that pushes it really high up onto the carb. So, you know, a teaspoonful of sugar, there's less than a teaspoonful of sugar in this. So if you're then putting more than that amount of sugar on each slice of bread, you can see that that then becomes quite a big load of sugar. You're going to have a crash come 11 o'clock. And I do have some patients who will be eating at least one of these, maybe one of these, with some of that, and then finish it off with that. You're actually probably eating 2 or 3 breakfasts in one, and that's the reason why people are not able to lose their weight, is because they're consuming calories just too much at the beginning of the day. And if you don't use those calories during the first half of the day, the body will just store it. So we're trying to get rid of that. Now, coming back to the egg for a second, we just said it's low carb, it's high fat. And actually there is some method to the madness by going with something like this. And often people will swear blind that egg and bacon is a really good breakfast. And actually, despite the fact that it's very high in fat, it's actually very low in carbs, it's quite high in protein. That means that it sits in your stomach for a bit longer, it's slower to absorb, and fats are energy sources, and so at the end of the day they deliver a slower energy source. They make you feel fuller for longer, and that's great, except people will have an egg and a bit of bacon, and then they will have a bit of toast with some sugar on it, and that completely destroys that whole process. So if you're going to go with a fatty breakfast, then make sure that it is high fat, high protein, and not much else. But then I guess, you know, the last question is, do you actually need breakfast in the first place? Because what happens if, say, for example, you have dinner at 8 o'clock in the evening and then you don't have breakfast and then you eat lunch at, say, 1 o'clock, something like that? Well, that is very close to the 16-8 diet, which is where you eat for 8 hours or intermittently throughout your 8 hours, but you have a 16-hour fast. And that has been shown to work very nicely in some people as well, and they literally are just having no breakfast. What happens? You then go into a form of starvation. Your body then regulates its sugar very carefully, and actually you might wake up in the morning a bit hungry, but you will stay the same amount of hungry throughout that first half of the day. And in some people, they find that much easier to sustain. So, you know, the question is, what's the best breakfast to have? Well, it's a bit like saying, what's the best diet? The best diet to be on, and there are lots of them, is the one that you can sustain. I don't really mind whether you're doing a 5-2 diet, a Mediterranean diet, or otherwise. It's all about the number of calories that you're consuming, and if you can stick to that, then that is better than nothing. So if you're somebody who likes the idea of a 16-8 diet, then perhaps breakfast is no breakfast. If you're somebody who likes to limit your carbs as much as you can, then egg and bacon might be the way forward for you. Obviously, you have to look at your whole diet for your lunch and your dinner. And Probably the best thing I would recommend for you in terms of trying to work out how many calories you're consuming is to use something like MyFitnessPal, which I've used, and it's been a really good education because I used to eat probably twice that, and I certainly would eat twice that, and then I realised that actually I was getting probably nearly a third to a half of my calories in before 9 o'clock in the morning, and that just wasn't very good for me. So that's a really good educational round, and if you are going to go with something that is healthy and sustaining, as I say, either fatty meals like an egg and bacon, or porridge soaked overnight in some yogurt or milk, and would be a very good idea. These two I'm absolutely fine with, and do me a favour, try and steer clear of the granola or limit it. And I haven't even gone into all the other foul things that are aimed at children and are highly sugared and highly fat and not much else. Bread, I would try and steer clear.